Awesome. Excellent to see your continued exploration, Nelson. Welcome back. All right. As always, excellent questions that you've submitted along with your work. Let's look at your work and start with the eye test. I love that you did this. This is an excellent assignment to do. This is a real good way to kind of put the microscope on one particular section of the face that you can use all the things you learn, all the tricks that you learn from doing this one um, kind of small test. You can use that information on the bigger stuff, which is awesome. That's why I really like this test idea. So, what can we talk about in here? You said that your eyes seem floaty. You tried copying your keyframes and leaving a frame or two in between, but are eye darts usually done in step mode, or is there another technique to make darts look sharp and crisp when splined? There's many different styles. If you're doing a very realistic type thing, sometimes eye darts can take up to like 5 frames, depending on how slow they're moving from one side of the camera to the other, one side of the face to the other. It can be up to like 5 or 6 frames, more like the longest. And it also depends on the state of mind. If you're super alert, it's going to be a lot faster. It's rare to do it in stepped, at least for me. I'm more like in the middle on most projects where it's like 3 or 4 frames between eye poses. And let's see what you have here. So I'm imagining you're feeling that this right here feels floaty, just from what you had said. So 1, 2, 3. You're doing 3 frames here, another 3 or 4 frames there. 2, 2. So anytime you feel something like lock into place, that's where it feels kind of fake to me. So in this case here, your 2 frame eye dart, and it freezes. This is where I would add a bit more frames, actually. I think your first 2 eye darts are working pretty well, but I'm going to show you what I would do here. And there's a bigger issue involved that I'll talk about in a second, about the fleshiness of the whole eye, the connectivity. But here, let's see. Maybe the best way to talk about it is to draw something. Here we go. All right, so if you've got pose A and pose B, we're really widening this out, pretending like the eye is super big or something. And you have it set so that you have a pose right here. It is dead center between them, so a 0.5. It is on the way to B, and it is perfectly in between. So what I would do, if it were me, I would play with having, if this is A and B, I would play with having a pose like this, where it's just starting like 10% of it. So really, it would be like here, but I'm trying to show both of them at the same time. So one pose that is just starting to move, and then another one that's favoring a side. So it's not dead center. It's either slowing into the move, or it's really alert and jumping really far and then slowing out by a bit. Either one could work. Maybe it would depend on the state of mind the character's in. Maybe it would depend on me just trying both and seeing what works. Maybe I would end up with 2 in between poses. So then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's a 6 frame thing, like I was talking about. That it depends on what distance they're traveling. I drew it really far spread apart here, obviously. In your example, all of the frames are overlapped. Right? It's more like this, and this are even closer together. So you don't have as much room, and you're not going to need 6 frames. But take those ideas, and they're basically, the main point is not to have the breakdown dead center between them. Maybe you need to favor this a little bit further over this way, or maybe you need to, and probably you need to have a slight ease out so that you're going like 10% of the move on the last frame, or 5% of the move on the last frame that it's actually moving, so that it's a little bit of an ease out. But let me get to what I was going to say about the much bigger thing at play here is the connectivity of the tissue around it. And so when you have the eye moving without anything else moving. So here, looking at this eye, the flesh around it isn't doing anything at all. And so that makes it feel really disconnected to me. It feels like I can see the computerness of it, that the eyeball, the sphere is turning, but it's not doing anything else to the character. That skin isn't touching the eye. It's just the eyeball itself that's moving. If we go back here, you do have a little bit more connectivity right here. So right here, the upper lid is going down with the eye. Great. That feels connected. The lower lid is not. And so watching like this line dip under this, while this is rock solid, makes it feel like it's not connected. So I would move the lower lid a little bit too. Probably less than that. And it doesn't have to be completely one-to-one attached. Like you don't have to have the lids going like this and the pupil right in the center, and it feels like they're all parented to each other. You can have the pupil move a little faster than the upper lid, and so the upper lid like drags behind for a frame and then catches up. Not by a ton, but I'll make this super huge again. If we've got this and this is the pupil, on the next frame, instead of making it, what's the best way to describe this? On the next frame down, instead of doing here, no, that's not gonna, that's the best way to look at this. If we move it down here and do that, where like this distance is identical to this one, you don't have to do that. You could do where it's a little bit bigger. And then on the next frame, it's a little bit smaller, and then that's where it ends. So there's a bit of a disconnect between them. So they don't feel parented to each other. Same thing on the lower lid. Maybe the end pose that you have still has the pupil, sorry, the iris cut off about as much. It's not like it has to maintain this exact distance here between pupil and lid. It can still get a little closer to the lower lid, but you want the lower lid to move a little bit with it. Pixels, even. And when you're zoomed in this close on the face, yes, it's just a matter of pixels, but it's about making things connected together. You might not need to do that tiny little move when you have something this far away. Maybe. I still probably would. Maybe an extra bit further away and I wouldn't. But when you're this close, it really makes a difference. Now on the other side, so then here when he moves his eyes back up this way, you want the lids to feel connected too. So you want them to change shape a bit. You want them to move up a bit. Then, so here, as they go this way, now you've got the eyelid changing, which is good, but it's going straight up. And the eye is going over. So what you can do is actually take this, the apex, right, the highest point of the lid, and you can move it over a little bit. So it changes shape. Like that. So now the apex is a little bit over here. You don't have to follow these drawings exactly. I'm just kind of illustrating the idea. The apex shifts. It usually tries to stay a bit closer to the direction of the pupil. It doesn't have to be directly on top of it, but having the pupil influence the shape of the eyelid helps a lot. So it doesn't have to end up looking like this. That's the really cartoony version. But just moving the apex slightly, so it's over here now, because the eyes went this way, helps a ton. Then, when you come back, then you shift that again. So if here the apex is like here, and then here the apex is like there, then it's right there. So it's moving over with the eye, and that's what's making it feel connected. All right, and then here the lids move without the eye moving at all. I might make the eye move a couple pixels towards center, perhaps, because it's already kind of favoring the left. Maybe we could come a little bit more towards center, just a few pixels, so it feels like things are moving together. Eyelids are cranking open, so make the eyes move just a bit. It's about making things feel connected. I also noticed that the corner feels really locked in place, that corner and that corner. So you could change the shape of that too. Maybe you could bring this down, maybe you could move that up, and kind of go for a bit more of a circular type feeling of surprise. It feels like you're trying to push towards that direction. Also watch out that right now you have the apex way over here, but the eye, the pupil is over there, so maybe something more towards the middle, kind of pulling it towards the direction of the pupil a bit would help. Another thing to watch out for on this is that right here on this frame, the brow is moving up, and the lid is moving up, and this lid is moving down, all at the same exact frame. Maybe you would want to offset and lead with the brows by a little bit. Maybe a frame or two, the brows start their motion. Right now they're jumping quite a bit for the first frame. Maybe you back off and have on frame 24 to 25, the brow moves up a little bit, a couple pixels again, like we're saying, just to start the momentum in that direction. And then it jumps up to where you have it. But then what you get there is the brows are leading the action, and they're kind of going first. Could be one frame, could be 2 or 3 frames, depending on the choices and the state of mind and everything. But having an offset there is going to help. And then it does feel here like everything is just frozen. All of the face just freezes at frame 30. So the converse is true too. Maybe you want to have the eyelids continue raising for a couple more frames, or maybe you want the brows to be the last thing to settle. But it's about lead and follow. What's leading, what's following, what's settling last. So maybe you want the brows to continue to lift up just a bit and change shapes. Maybe push up on the outer edge a little bit more so that it jumps up and then goes, and that last tiny little bit of drift. Or the same thing with the lids. Or with this ring, the eye sockets could also be expanding a bit, but everything is stopping at the same frame. Everything's starting at the same frame. That's what I want you to change. I want you to lead a little bit. I want you to delay a little bit. Find something to lead, something to follow, and cushion out. So you could, what I'll usually do, this is like my blocking pass, what you have here. And then I would, let's say, the eyes, draw this. Let's say the lids curve looks like this, right? Where this is perfectly straight. I'm not doing a good job of, well, it's curved to get there and then perfectly straight. So what I would do, I would probably set a key like here and then move this one down a little bit when I get in the graph editor so that there's that little bit of drift before it gets straight again. Maybe I would even put it out here and I would bring both of these down a little bit, but you want like a subtle drift that continues over several more frames, and that will keep it living in the hold. It's a moving hold. It keeps it slightly alive, just drifting pixels in between the moves so that you can hold that pose before you get to the next one. All right, and then same thing on same kind of concept for when bringing the brows down. I like your overshoot, and I like that last bit of squeeze that's going inward after you come down. That's awesome that you've got that going down and then in instead of everything coming in at like a 45-degree angle. It's down and then in. That feels like you get that extra oomph of squeeze right there at the end. I think that's working great. And you also have a really nice shape here. This is a really cool shape. It feels angry. I love how you're using the brow to cut into the eye. Like the brow here is becoming the upper lid. It's cutting off where we can see the brow. It feels very appealing. I like it. The recoil on the brows might be a little slow. So here's where it feels maybe a little slow, floaty. Is that you've got, let's see, about 43 is the apex down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 frames to come back up. I think your instincts are right about how to get that little bit of cushion, but I think it's too big and a little too slow. So I would try taking some frames off of it and reducing the range, how far down it comes versus how far up it finally settles. So that you still got that same exact idea, but it's a little bit sharper on the bounce back up, and it doesn't go quite as high back up. And I think you'd have it.